Do you know what it feels like when an entire world decides you don't belong? When every person who should protect you suddenly points to someone else, and you're left standing there alone? That was me at 9 years old. I still remember the heat of that Los Angeles afternoon. The blinds were half closed, slicing sunlight into sharp lines across the living room floor. My parents were arguing in the kitchen, voices sharp like broken glass. My brother sat on the couch, eyes fixed on the ground. My little sister clutched her stuffed bunny so tight the seams were ready to burst. And me? I was frozen, holding my breath, trying to make myself invisible. Then came the decision, not whispered, not gentle, but blunt, like a judge's hammer. My dad said, "Ethan's coming with me." My mom snapped, "Maya stays with me." And no one, neither of them, said my name. Do you hear that silence? The sound of being erased. I waited, thinking maybe they forgot for just a second. Surely one of them would turn and say, "And Hannah, of course, you're with me." But the moment stretched. My brother avoided my eyes. My sister buried her face in the bunny's ears. My mom started gathering bags. My dad jingled his car keys. And the question burned in my chest, what about me? The answer never came. My mom brushed past me, her perfume sharp, almost suffocating. My dad opened the door, sunlight spilling in like a spotlight, and called for Ethan. Maya cried when she left. And me? I stood in the doorway as the sound of footsteps faded down the stairs. Then the door slammed shut. That's how it ended. No goodbye, no, "I'll see you soon," just the slam. You know that sound? It's louder than a scream, louder than a fight, louder than love that's supposed to last. I wandered the apartment, the cereal box on the counter still open, 2 bowls half eaten, the cartoon still playing on the muted TV, everything normal, except the people who filled that space were gone. I pressed my palm against the door like maybe I could will them back. Nothing, only silence, stretching wider than the whole apartment. You ever been so unwanted that even silence feels heavy? Like the walls themselves know you're not supposed to be there? I sat on the couch, hugging my knees, staring at the door as if it would open again. It never did. I thought about running downstairs, chasing them, begging, "Take me too." But my legs wouldn't move. Pride or fear, I still don't know which, glued me to that couch. And maybe deep down, I already knew. They had made their choice. That's the thing about being a child. You still believe choice is reversible, that love is unbreakable, that no matter what, you belong to someone. I learned in that moment, harsh, brutal, that none of that was guaranteed. Hours passed. The sun slid behind the Hollywood Hills. Shadows crept across the walls. My stomach growled, but I couldn't eat. I poured milk into the cereal bowl left behind, even though it was soggy and warm. Every bite tasted like cardboard and tears. I kept waiting for the sound of keys turning, footsteps on the stairs, nothing. Only the hum of the fridge and the muffled laughter of neighbors through thin walls. Do you know what it's like to hear other families laugh while yours vanishes? It cuts deeper than any scream. When night finally fell, I turned on every light in the apartment. As if brightness could push away loneliness. It didn't. I curled up on the couch with a blanket too small, whispering to myself, "They'll come back tomorrow." I said it again and again until exhaustion forced me to sleep. But the truth was already carved into me. A truth I didn't have words for at 9, but I feel in my bones even now. I wasn't chosen, not by him, not by her, not by anyone. And here's where I turn to you. If you were 9, if you were standing in that living room with the blinds cutting sunlight into stripes, and your parents both turned away, would you run after them? Would you beg? Or would you freeze like I did, waiting for love that never returned? I didn't know it then, but that slammed door wasn't just the end of a day. It was the start of a lifetime of questions, of searching, of trying to build a world where I wasn't invisible. That's why I'm here telling you this, because maybe you felt invisible too. Maybe you've heard the slam of a door meant to stay open. And maybe, just maybe, hearing my story will remind you you're not alone in that silence. Do you know what it feels like to pack your life into a trash bag? Not a suitcase, not even a backpack. A thin black bag, the kind that rips if you put too much inside. That was how I entered foster care. That bag was my luggage, and every time I moved, it was the only thing I carried. The first house smelled like bleach and cigarettes. The foster mom greeted me with a forced smile, the kind you give when you don't want company but have no choice. The room was small, twin bed pushed against the wall, faded posters of horses taped up from whoever lived there before me. At night I lay awake, listening to the hum of the fridge, waiting for someone to come tuck me in. No one did. I whispered goodnight into the dark, hoping maybe the walls would answer. They didn't. Then came the second house, bigger, nicer on the outside. Inside, it was colder. The father ignored me. The mother fed us on schedule, like she was feeding pets. She told me, "Don't touch the food unless I say so." I remember sneaking into the kitchen one night, opening a bag of chips. The sound of the bag crackling was deafening. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. And when she caught me, her eyes didn't show anger, they showed disgust. Like I wasn't a child, but something less. Have you ever eaten quickly, standing in the dark, shoving food into your mouth because you weren't sure when you'd be allowed again? I did, over and over. The salt stung my lips, and still I stuffed it down, because hunger doesn't care about dignity. The third house was chaos. Kids everywhere, all foster, all fighting for scraps of attention. Toys broken, dishes piled high, shouting echoing from every room. I remember dialing the phone late at night, trying to call the number my mom once used. I let it ring and ring, clutching the receiver with sweaty hands. Nobody picked up. Nobody ever picked up. No one answered. No one. That refrain played in my head like a broken record. No one answered at the house. No one answered at school when I asked for help. No one answered inside me either. Silence became my companion. One house had rules taped to the fridge. No friends, no TV, no questions, questions that one burned because I had so many. Why me? Why wasn't I chosen? Why didn't anyone fight for me? I wrote them in a notebook, tiny letters in the margins, as if answers might appear between the lines. They never did. Not all foster homes were cruel. Some were just indifferent. But sometimes indifference is worse. At least cruelty acknowledges your existence. Indifference erases you. One foster dad would sit in front of the TV, beer in hand, never once turning to ask how school was. I could have vanished into thin air, and the only thing he'd notice was the missing chair at dinner. And yet, through all of it, I kept waiting. I kept a tiny hope that one day someone would knock on the door and say, "We've come for Hannah. She belongs with us." Every car that slowed on the street, every phone ringing in the hall, I thought, this is it. It never was. Do you know how heavy hope can become when it keeps collapsing on itself? Like carrying a balloon that always pops, and still you tie another string to your wrist, hoping the next one floats longer. That was me. Hopeful and hopeless all at once. I remember one winter night, curled up in a drafty room, blanket thin as paper. Snow piled outside, and the window leaked cold air. I whispered into the dark, "Mom?" "Dad." My breath fogged the glass. Silence replied, always silence. Looking back, I don't know which hurt more, the cruelty or the quiet. The slammed doors or the ignored pleas, both carved into me. Both shaped the girl who would later build a life out of broken pieces. And I need to ask you, if you were me, shuffled from house to house, treated like a guest who overstayed their welcome, Would you have given up? Or would you have kept dialing, even when no one answered? Because that's the thing about survival. It's not loud. It's not heroic. It's eating chips in the dark. It's whispering goodnight to empty rooms. It's dialing numbers you know won't pick up just to hear the ring. This was my reality. Strange houses, strange rules, strange faces calling themselves family, but never saying my name with love. Each door that opened was just another door that would close. And through it all, I stayed standing, not because I felt strong, but because what choice did I have? I learned that sometimes survival is nothing more than breathing in silence and breathing it out again. If you've ever been there, if you've ever felt invisible in a house full of people, share your story. Because no child should grow up wondering if anyone cares. And maybe, just maybe, if we talk about it, we can make sure fewer doors slam on kids like me. The first time I stepped into the auditorium, I didn't come for a play. I came because it was warm. The heater in my foster room wheezed like an old smoker, and the window leaked cold air, so I stayed late at school, wandering halls that smelled like pencil shavings and floor wax. The auditorium doors were propped open with a paint-chipped brick. Inside, dust floated in the stage lights like tiny gold planets. Someone was humming. "Hey," a voice called from the stage. "You lost?" I squinted up. A woman in black jeans and a faded band tee looked down at me, a strip of light cutting across her face. "I'm Miss Carter," she said. "Theater." I laughed. Too quickly. Definitely lost then. "Come closer," she said, softer now, as if not to scare a bird. "You can watch." I sat in the third row. The seat creaked like it had secrets, Ms. Carter crossed the stage and clapped once. 3 students appeared from the wings, carrying a cardboard city skyline. Someone switched on a single bulb over center stage. A girl stepped into it and spoke words I didn't know, old and sharp and beautiful. Her voice filled the room like warm water. I forgot to breathe. Class ended. Kids scattered, backpacks thumping. Ms. Carter hopped off the stage and slid into my row. "You've got an audience face," she said. "What's that?" "Eyes that drink things in." She tilted her head. "What's your name?" "Hannah," I said, hesitant. I didn't say the rest. The houses. The rules on the fridge. The black trash bag. "Ever try drama?" she asked. "I live it," I joked, and instantly hated myself for sounding bitter. She didn't flinch. "Tomorrow, after school. Come by." She pressed a paper into my palm. "Audition sides for a 1-act. Read it or don't. Just show up." I turned the paper over that night under a too-dim lamp. The words looked like a code only other people could read. My foster home was loud, television blasting, someone slamming a cabinet. I covered my ears and whispered the lines anyway. The syllables felt awkward in my mouth, but there was a rhythm in them. A drum I could almost hear if I held still enough. The next afternoon, my hands shook. I nearly walked past the auditorium. I nearly went home to the drafty window and the thin blanket. Instead, I pushed the door. Ms. Carter stood at the edge of the stage, a pencil tucked behind her ear. "You came," she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. She had us stand in a circle. "Shake your arms out," she coached. "Drop your shoulders, breathe." I rolled my eyes, but when I breathed the way she showed, slow in, slower out, the tight knot under my ribs loosened a notch. We read. I stumbled. A boy snickered, "Ms." Carter shot him a look that could file metal. Then she turned to me and nodded. "Again slower. Feel the period. Let the silence say something, silence." I knew silence. But for once, I could tell it what to say. I tried again. My voice didn't tremble. The words didn't slip away. They landed one by one, like birds finding a wire. Afterward, Ms. Carter handed my pages back with a smile that reached her eyes. "You're talented," she said. I stood there dumb. No one had said that to me before. Not talented at surviving, not talented at disappearing. Talented. Like the kind of word you frame and hang up so you remember it exists? That night I practiced in the bathroom with the shower running so no one would hear. I watched steam bead on the mirror and pretended it was applause. I learned where to pause, where to lift a glance, where to let anger crack the words, and where to let tenderness mend them. And somewhere in that tiny fogged room, I met a version of myself who wasn't just the girl nobody chose. Rehearsals became my shelter. The auditorium smelled like sawdust and old velvet. We built sets with blunted hammers, shared cheap pizza that tasted perfect because we'd earned it, and argued over whether a chair should be upstage or downstage like it actually mattered. It did. Everything mattered on that stage. Every light cue, every beat, every breath. Do you know that moment when someone believes in you before you do? When their certainty is so steady that you borrow it, like a coat, until it warms you from the inside? That was Miss Carter's gift. She didn't talk about my past. She didn't ask. She talked to me like an artist who needed tools. She gave me notes like I could execute them. Find the spine of the scene, she'd say. What's the want under the words? What did I want? To be seen, to belong, to finally choose myself. One afternoon, she handed me a monologue from a different play. Try this, she said. It bites? It did. It talked about being left behind, about learning to walk with a limp you carry inside your chest. The first time I read it, my voice cracked so hard I had to stop. Ms. Carter waited. She didn't fill the gap. She didn't rescue me from it. The gap became a room I could walk around in. I started again slower. I tasted every word. The hurt didn't swallow me. I swallowed it and turned it into sound. When I finished, the auditorium was quiet in a different way. Not the empty kind, the full kind, Ms. Carter nodded once. There you are, she said. After that, the hallways looked different. The lockers weren't just metal mouths ready to bite. They were scenery I could pass through. Teachers I'd barely noticed started saying hi. I still packed my life in a black bag, but now there was also a script in there, dog-eared and underlined in blue pen. We put on the one act on a Thursday. The audience wasn't big. Parents, a few bored siblings, a cluster of kids who'd shown up for extra credit. But when the lights came up, the stage became a world that listened. I hit my first line clean, second, cleaner. Midway through, I forgot to be nervous. I was simply there, alive, whole. I found the pause, Ms. Carter taught me. I let it breathe. Then I said the line that used to scare me. I am not what was done to me. It rang, not loud, clear. I felt it move through me like a key turning in a lock I hadn't known was there. Backstage after the bows, miss. Carter squeezed my shoulder. Midpoint, she whispered, smiling. Every story has one. You just had yours. I didn't fully understand then. But walking home under streetlights that threw our shadows long and thin, I realized something had shifted. The center of gravity inside me had moved. Pain was still there. The past was still there, but it wasn't steering anymore. Here's the twist I want you to hear, the one I didn't see coming. You don't need your past to vanish for your future to begin. You only need one person, one room, one moment where your voice fits your mouth like it was made for it. Mine was a dusty auditorium and a teacher in a band tee telling me to breathe. Maybe you've had a Ms. Carter. Maybe you haven't. Yet. But if someone has ever looked at you and said, you're talented, and you didn't believe them, borrow their belief, wear it like a coat. Walk into the cold with it. Keep walking until the cold feels less like punishment and more like air. I still had Foster rules to obey. I still ate quickly sometimes, standing by a sink. But I also taped my monologue above my bed. I traced the words with my finger in the dark. I learned that a script is just a map. The journey is yours. And for the first time, the destination didn't scare me. It called to me. You might be wondering, did everything change overnight? Number. Change came like sunrise, barely there, then undeniable. I started volunteering to move set pieces. I stayed after to strike props, miss. Carter loaned me a book on acting that smelled like coffee and old rain. I read it on the bus, lips moving silently with every exercise. People stared. I didn't care. There's a question I want to leave you with, because I promised I'd talk to you, not at you. Who believed in you first? If a name just flashed in your mind, text them. Say thank you. And if no name comes, hold on. Your person might be closer than you think. Sometimes they wait behind a propped open door, in a room full of dust and light, ready to hand you words that turn into wings. The first lease I ever signed smelled like dust and courage. The storefront was a former shoe repair shop on a side street off Sunset, the kind of place you pass without seeing a dozen times before you finally wonder what's inside. Cracked tile, a ceiling fan that wheezed, a back room with a sink the color of old bones. Everyone told me it was too small for a theater. They were right. And I wanted it anyway. I painted the walls myself, rolling midnight blue over scuffed plaster until my arms ached. I pulled up the dead carpet and found concrete that looked like moon surface, pocked and stubborn. I sealed it, swept it, called it a stage. I borrowed lights from a community college and bought gels secondhand. I learned to solder in a YouTube rabbit hole at 2 a.m. because the dimmer pack buzzed like a hornet. When I flipped the breakers that first night and the room went from dull to gold, I cried, not a sob. Just the quiet kind that happens when a piece of you finally clicks into place. Do you know that feeling? When a room starts to fit the shape of your life? We opened with a 2-weekend run of short plays about belonging, 20 chairs no more. I hand-lettered the program on cardstock and ran to Kinko's 5 minutes before they closed. My friends showed up with folding stools, just in case. The first audience shuffled in, careful, like they might break something that mattered. I told them they already belonged here. I meant it. I did everything. Box office, lights, notes. I swept glitter off the floor at midnight and counted ticket stubs at 1 a.m. I emailed reviewers who never answered and hung flyers on telephone poles until my fingers were gray with staple dust. I wasn't making money. I was making meaning. Sometimes that has to come first. Between shows, life grew. I found a circle of friends who stuck around after strike, who ate grocery store cupcakes on the curb and argued about line breaks like they were policy. There was Zoe, who could turn a blank wall into a set with 3 thrift store frames and a scarf. There was Marcus, who brought soup when I forgot to eat. There was Eli, the lighting designer I fell for slowly, the way dawn takes its time. He spoke softly, thought deeply, laughed in low chords. He never asked for the full story of my past. He asked for my present. What do you need? Sometimes the answer was gaff tape. Sometimes it was silence. He gave me both. On Thursdays, I taught a free class for teens who couldn't afford lessons. They came in angry, guarded, brilliant. I watched their shoulders drop when they realized the stage would not embarrass them. We built scenes out of bus schedules and text messages. We practiced no and yes as if both were sacred. When they left, they took up more space. I liked that. There were failures. A show that never found its heartbeat. A week where the AC died and the audience fanned themselves with programs like Crying Birds. A landlord who dropped by with new conditions. I nearly quit twice. I didn't because of a sandwich. It was 11 p.m. after a rehearsal that went sideways. Lines stuck, a prop broke. My bank account looked like a joke with bad timing. I sat on the floor backstage with my head against a paint can and considered texting Ms. Carter with a confession. Maybe I had been brave for a minute and it was over. Then Eli appeared with a paper bag. Inside, a turkey sandwich, still warm. He handed it to me like a sacrament. Eat first, he said. Decide later. I ate. I didn't quit. Sometimes survival is just a sandwich at the right time. A month later, an arts blog posted a tiny review, 2 paragraphs, 1 sentence. "This pocket theater glows." We printed it and taped it to the box office window like a diploma. More people came, not many. Enough to keep the lights on barely. I slept better. The knot under my ribs loosened again. We celebrated our 1-year anniversary with a new piece, monologues stitched from interviews about home. Opening night, I stood in the back, palms sweating, listening for the breath before the first line. It came. Clear. The audience leaned forward as if someone had tugged a single string through the room. When the lights went out at the end, there was that full quiet again. Then applause, sharp and kind. People lingered in the lobby telling strangers, "This part felt like me." That's the only review I care about now. And then, the message. It was a Tuesday morning. I was at the counter arguing with a label maker that printed everything in hieroglyphs. My phone buzzed with a notification I almost ignored. A name I hadn't seen in 20 years bloomed on my screen. Not a spammer, not a donor. My brother. For a second, I didn't breathe. The label maker spit out a tiny rectangle that read, question mark, question mark, question mark. Same. I didn't open the message right away. My hands found the same old tremor they used to get when the phone rang in someone else's kitchen and hope bullied me into dialing. I put the phone face down. I wiped the counter. I rewound the gaff tape. None of it helped. The past had found the door I thought I'd sealed with paint and monologues and rent checks, and it walked in like it had a key. Do you ever feel time fold? The room didn't change, but I was suddenly 2 people. The woman who ran a theater in Los Angeles, and the girl who whispered goodnight to empty rooms. I picked up the phone and read the first line. "Hannah, if this is you, I've been looking for you." I sat on the floor because chairs felt too fragile for what my body had to hold. My heartbeat went loud, like someone had put a mic to it. I looked around at the space I'd built, the lamp I'd rewired, the ladder with paint chips like confetti, the wall of show photos clipped on twine. My life, my proof. I wasn't that child anymore, and still, the old ache recognized its name. I texted Zoe. He found me. She replied so fast the bubbles barely danced. "Do you want me there?" I didn't answer yet. I scrolled the message again. 2 decades, boiled down to a hello that felt like a title shift. I could hear Miss Carter's voice from years ago. Find the spine of the scene. What was the spine here? Boundaries, truth, choice? I typed and erased and typed again. In the end, I wrote 5 words. Yes, it's me. I'm here. I wish I could tell you relief came like rain. It didn't. What came was a strange, bright gravity. As if the past and present had agreed to meet in my small theater and ask for a seat, I stood up. I opened the front door and let the street air in. Cars hissed by. A bus sighed at the corner. A dog barked at nothing. The world kept going, so did I. This is where I leave you, just for now, with the sentence that rang in my head all day, the sentence I almost said out loud to the empty chairs. I thought the past was closed. But I was wrong. If you've ever built something steady and felt the old ground shift beneath it, tell me in the comments, how did you breathe through it? Your words might be the sandwich someone else needs. We picked a neutral place. Neutral like the word you use when you're not ready to say safe. A little family restaurant in Los Feliz with red vinyl booths, water glasses that sweat, and a neon sign that hummed like a quiet warning. I arrived early because I didn't trust time. I sat where I could see the door. I told myself I came for closure. I told myself I came because stories deserve endings. I didn't say out loud the other truth. A small part of me still wanted someone to say, finally, "We choose you." The hostess set down 3 menus and smiled like this was just dinner. I wrapped the paper napkin tight around the fork until it wrinkled. The bell over the door chimed, and my brother stepped in first, taller than I remembered, shoulders squared like he'd been practicing responsibility. My mother followed, hair smoothed, lips pressed together the way she did when she didn't want to ruin her makeup by crying. My father came last, slower, scanning the room like a man looking for exits. "Hi," I said. It landed somewhere between welcome and warning. "Hi, Han," my brother said, tentative, the nickname like a bridge missing planks. My mother leaned forward, arms out, then stopped halfway, her hands hovering in the no-man's land between us. "You look wonderful." I let her hands fall. "Thanks." We slid into the booth, the vinyl side. The waitress brought waters and asked if we were celebrating anything. No one answered. She nodded, like she recognized a table where celebration might not be the right verb. We opened menus we didn't read. I watched the condensation trail down my glass. Time did a strange stretch. Too fast and too slow. My father cleared his throat first. "You've built something impressive," he said. "The theater—" "Yes," I said. "I have." He nodded like he'd just approved a project plan at work. My mother reached for the breadbasket and her voice softened. "I've been following your posts, the photos. You look happy." "Sometimes I am," I said. "Sometimes I'm furious. It can be both." Silence. Then my brother, blurting like a kid again. "I wanted to call you so many times, Hannah. Why didn't you?" It came out calm, which surprised me. "I didn't know if—" He stopped, chewing the knuckle of his thumb. Old habit. "I didn't know if you'd want me." There it was. The cut and the salve. "I wanted someone," I said. "That would have been enough." The waitress returned for orders. We chose things that felt safe to pronounce. Pasta, grilled chicken, a salad that promised nothing more than leaves and dressing. When she left, my mother set her menu down like a shield. "I wish we could go back," she said, "to that day. Do it differently." "Which part?" I asked. "The arguing, the choosing, the leaving?" "All of it," she whispered. My father flinched. "It wasn't choosing," he said, voice tightening. "It was logistics. You were supposed to—" "Stop," I said. "Not loud. Sharp. The kind of sharp that makes a line on a map." "Don't call it logistics. Call it what it was." He looked away out toward the neon, like it might tell him what to say. My mother reached for my hand. I kept mine under the table. "Do you want to hear it?" I asked. "All of it. Not the version that's neat enough to sleep with, the version I carry." No one spoke. That was permission or surrender. Sometimes they look the same. "I was 9, I said, "and you were loud and tired and full of reasons. You split us like furniture. You said names that weren't mine. You left. The door slammed. I ate cereal that wasn't mine. I made phone calls that went nowhere. I learned the sound of a laugh through a wall that doesn't belong to you." My mother's face folded. "I am sorry." "I believe you," I said. "And I also live with what sorry can't fix. The food arrived. Steam curled from plates like a stage cue. No one touched anything. The smell of tomato and garlic sat heavy. I could hear a family laughing 3 booths over, the clatter of ice in a pitcher, the scrape of a chair, life indifferent. My brother spoke carefully. "Hannah, sometimes I think he thought you were better off." He glanced toward our father. "With her." I laughed once, a sound with edges. "Better off where I wasn't wanted." My father's jaw tightened. "We made mistakes." "I live them," I said. He lifted his fork, then set it down. "I don't know how to do this." I leaned forward, elbows on the table like a teenager daring consequences. "Then listen, just listen." The restaurant's noise dimmed in my ears. It wasn't actual silence. It was the kind of silence you earn when you stop performing your pain for people who prefer a softer story. I breathed. I told them about the bleach-smelling kitchen, the rules taped to fridges, the way a bag of chips can sound like an alarm when you're stealing permission to eat. I told them about dial tones and busy signals, and the voice that finally said, "You're talented," and how it rang louder than any apology. My mother pressed her napkin to her mouth to hold in whatever threatened to spill out. My father stared at his knuckles like they might explain him. My brother's eyes were wet, not dramatic tears, just a shine that made him look human in a way I hadn't allowed. He said, "I should have found you sooner." "You couldn't drive at 10, I said. It was the kindest line I had. I gave it to him. We ate a little. It felt like chewing through fog. Halfway through, my mother reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. "I brought this," she said, and laid it between the salt and the pepper. "You don't have to open it. What is it?" "A letter I wrote back then. I never sent it." She pushed it a fraction closer. "I should have. I didn't." I watched my own hand reach for it like it belonged to someone braver. The paper was brittle at the fold, my name on the front in her careful, slanted script. I slid it toward me and then stopped. "Not here," I said. "I want to control how my heart breaks." She nodded, devastated and dignified. The envelope sat like a tiny sleeping animal. My father finally found words that didn't sound like policies. "I can't ask you to forgive me," he said, "but I am asking to be allowed to try, to be present now." "Presence isn't a favor," I said. "It's a requirement. If you want to be in my life, there are rules." He blinked. "Rules?" "Yes," I said. "I know, ironic." I held his eyes. "Here they are. We don't rewrite the past to make anyone look better. We don't tell my story for me. We don't use words like logistics to describe a wound." He nodded once, twice. The third nod looked like understanding. "And one more," I added. "We move slow. I pick the pace." My brother exhaled, a sound that almost turned into a laugh. "You always were the director." "Someone had to be," I said, and for a heartbeat the table breathed like a living thing. We let the waitress box our food. We stacked the containers like fragile truths. My mother asked if she could hug me. I hesitated just long enough to make it real, then said yes. She smelled like the perfume from my childhood, the one that used to make the car feel like a fancy hotel. My father held out his hand. I shook it because I didn't want to lie with my body. My brother hugged me quick and fierce, the way people hold a rope. At the door, under the humming neon, my mother said, "Can we see your theater sometime?" "Not yet," I said. "Soon, maybe." On the sidewalk, the city carried on. Sirens far off, a skateboard rattling over a crack, a couple arguing about parking like it was the end of the world. I stood there with the envelope in my bag and the weight of 4 lives shifting. I had come wanting an apology to act like a spell. I left with something harder and better, boundaries that kept me whole. Do you know that moment when a story doesn't end, but it lands? That's where I was. Landed, not finished. And that's enough for now. If you're listening and you've got your own dinner to face, your own table where old ghosts pull up chairs, take this with you. You're allowed to set the rules. You're allowed to choose the pace. And you're allowed to walk out still belonging to yourself. If this resonates, tell me how you'd draw your line. I'm reading. Your words might help someone take their seat with both feet on the ground. The envelope looked ordinary, Manila. Creased at the corners. A return address from the county office that keeps everyone's secrets in steel cabinets. It was a Tuesday, the kind that smells like coffee and errands. I almost tossed it onto the pile of bills. Then I saw my name typed in a font that belonged to another decade, and the air in the room thinned. I slid a finger under the flap and felt the glue give. Paper rasped against paper. A stack slid out, photocopies flecked with black specks, staples crooked, clipped with a rusted binder clip like a tiny jaw. On top, record of dependency proceedings. Below that, my birthday, the case number, and a word I'd never seen attached to my life in print. Relinquishment. Do you know the sound a room makes when it goes quiet too fast? It's not silence. It's a pressure drop. My theater, usually humming, suddenly had edges. I could hear the fluorescent tube over the lobby flicker. I could hear Eli's boots in the hallway stop, then step backward. "You okay?" he called. "I don't know yet," I said. I didn't recognize my own voice. It sounded careful, like someone carrying a full glass across a crowded room. He leaned in the doorway, reading my face before my words. "Do you want me to stay?" "Stay," I said. Without looking up, I read. Pages that talked about me like I was a project. Petition filed. Placement recommended. Court fines. Dry verbs that tried to make a life neat. Notes from social workers in tidy cursive that slanted to the right. Client appeared withdrawn. Client consumed snack rapidly. Client asked if she could call her mother. A photocopy of a form with boxes. Parental rights. Voluntary relinquishment. And 2 signatures at the bottom. Their names, side by side. Ink turned gray by the machine, but still undeniably theirs. I blinked, and the page didn't change. My body did. Heat climbed my throat. My palms went slick. The past that I had arranged into scenes and props and safe distances lurched forward, unbuckled. I whispered it once to make it real. They signed. Eli didn't speak. He took 1 step closer, then stopped. Like approaching a skittish animal, I set the first page down and picked up another. It was a letter from a caseworker to the court clerk, 2 paragraphs explaining why permanency planning required termination of parental claim like a luggage tag. "Like an umbrella you could leave at a restaurant and not come back for," I laughed, a single sound that had no humor. Have you ever met your history in black and white and realized you've been telling a softer version? I had always said, they left me. It was blunt, but survivable. This was different. This was surgical. This was paperwork that said I wasn't a mistake. I was a decision. I kept reading. There were dates I remembered, houses I could smell if I closed my eyes, and dates I didn't. Days when apparently someone had filed something about me between lunch and a staff meeting. The phrasing was tidy, almost gentle. In the child's best interest, best. The word turned metallic in my mouth. Best for who? I reached a page that had been stamped in red, approved. The stamp bled through to the next sheet like a bruise. Beneath, there was a single sentence that held my whole body. Both parents voluntarily and knowingly relinquish all rights and responsibilities. I felt my pulse in my fingertips. I lifted the page until the signatures were the only thing in my vision. My father's name, letters leaning forward, impatient even here. My mother's name, careful and pretty, like a signature you practice in the margins. I traced the angles in the air, not touching. The room tipped. I put the pages down because it felt like they might fall through my hands. Eli crossed the space finally and sat on the floor beside me, shoulder against the wall, close enough to anchor without pressing. He didn't reach for the papers. He didn't reach for me. He watched my face the way a medic watches for signs. "Say it," I told myself. "Put the words in the air so they can't hide." The voice in my head sounded like Miss Carter. Let the silence say something, then fill it. "They didn't just leave me," I said, each word lightly salted with disbelief. "They signed." I swallowed. "They signed to refuse me. We let the sentence sit between us. It changed the temperature. It changed the light. It changed the math of my life. I went back in. That's what it felt like. Diving. There was a checklist with squares ticked next to phrases like visitation suspended and case closed. There were initials I couldn't decipher and sticky notes scanned right along with the page that said things like, "Call back later," in hurried loops. So many grown-up hands touching a child's fate and then filing it away. Do you want to know the worst line? It wasn't legal, it was human. Child asked, "What did I do wrong?" encouraged child to focus on future. I pictured my small face, my little voice bargaining with an adult who had minutes and mandates and probably 100 other kids to see that week. I pictured how quickly they had to move on, how slowly the question stuck to me. I flipped to the final page and found a stapled affidavit, my parents attesting that they understood the consequences, that they had not been coerced, that this was in the interest of the child. At the bottom, a notary seal pressed a faint official sunburst into the paper. I rubbed my thumb over it and felt the teeth of it scrape my skin. Something in me buckled, not because the truth was bigger than I could carry, but because it was sharper than any version I'd prepared for. This wasn't abandonment as weather. This was abandonment as pen stroke, as appointment kept. "Do you want water?" Eli asked. "No," I said too quickly. "Yes." I laughed again, afraid edge sound. "Both." He returned with a glass that left a wet ring on the desk. I didn't drink. I stared at the ring like it might be a portal. My phone lay face down next to the stack. I picked it up and scrolled, not for social media, not for escape, for proof that people were alive and reachable. A text from Zoe about a prop table, a reminder to pay the electric bill, and a thread with my mother from days ago about nothing, really. "I hope you're well." I pressed the call button before I could stage manage myself out of it. She answered on the third ring. "Hannah?" The sound of her voice jogged an old nerve. "I got something from the county," I said. No hello, no preface. "It's records. From back then. A pause. Not long. Long enough. Oh, there are forms." I looked at the signatures again to make sure I wasn't inventing them. "There's a relinquishment. Your name is on it. His, too." My mother inhaled, a tight sound, the kind you make when you step into cold water. "We were advised," she said. "It was complicated. You have to understand." "No," I said, and surprised myself with how steady it was. "I don't have to understand before you tell the truth. Did you sign?" Silence grew between us like a wall made of clear glass. I could see through it and still bump my head. "Yes," she said. The word was very small. "I did." My mouth went dry. I looked at Eli. He was looking at me, not at the papers, as if the only document that mattered was my face. "And him?" I asked. I didn't say his name. "Yes," she said. "We both did." "Knowingly," I said, quoting the affidavit before I could stop myself. "Voluntarily, in my best interest." She started to cry after that. Quiet, careful, the way you cry when you don't want to be heard in a house that listens. I thought, they told us that you'd be better, that you would find stability. "I found theater," I said. "I found myself." The rest was not stability, it was survival. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know," I said, and I did. I also felt fire climb my ribs. "Sorry is not the eraser you want it to be." I don't know what else to say. "Then don't say anything," I said, hearing my own rule set click into place. "Listen." I told her about the forms as if she hadn't been there. The stamp, the seal, the single sentence that ended legal parenthood the way you end a paragraph. I told her the line about little me asking what I did wrong, and I let the words sit there, heavy as wet denim. She tried to explain her fear, her money. "The lawyer who said the path was cleanest this way. Fear makes good people do cowardly things, yes, but fear also doesn't sign with two hands. We hung up without a resolution, just a shape. The shape of a conversation we would not unhave." I texted my brother. "I need to talk." He called immediately, voice rough, guilty already. He hadn't known. He said that twice. "I swear to you, Han, I didn't know." I believed him. And still, the knowing now didn't fix the unknowing then. We both fell quiet and let the static say what words couldn't. After the calls, I sat with the file open and tried to breathe like Ms. Carter taught me, in, out. Slow like pouring honey, it helped? Not much. Enough to keep the edges from shredding me. You may be wondering, what does betrayal feel like the second time? Less like thunder, more like a fault line you learn to live near finally slipping under your feet. The room doesn't collapse. The shelf you trust wobbles, a glass tips, you catch it. Your hand shakes anyway. I gathered the papers and put them back in order. I didn't staple them tighter. I didn't smooth the creases. I wanted the pages to keep their scars so I'd recognize them. I slid the stack back into the envelope and wrote the date on the corner. I slid the envelope into a drawer I rarely use, the one that holds warranties and expired coupons. Then I took it out again. This wasn't a warranty. This was evidence. I carried the envelope to the theater, to the stage we'd built out of stubborn and paint. I set it on the center mark where the floorboards are warmest under the lights. I stood across from it like it was an actor I needed to listen to. The air had that sawdust tang it gets after a set change. I imagined the close-up, my hands, the paper, the little blur where my middle name sits. The camera would push in, the world would hush, and my voice, even if only in my head, would say the line clean. They didn't just leave me. They signed to refuse me. Here's what cracked me open, and it might crack you too if you've lived anything like this. Seeing it in ink didn't make me smaller. For a second, it made me enormous, because if I had survived that, consciously chosen against, procedurally filed, then the life I'd built wasn't an accident. It was an answer. But I am not going to lie to you. The rage came next, hot and focused. Not the thrashing kind, the surgical kind that knows exactly where it hurts. I paced the width of the stage, counting boards, whispering names, telling the dark everything I hadn't said at that dinner. I felt 10 and 20 and 33 all at once, and then I stopped pacing because I remembered the rules I set. Boundaries are not only for other people, they're also for your own storms. So I sat on the edge of the stage and let the anger cool into clarity. I needed truth. I needed pace. I needed a room that would not lie to me. I knew exactly which room that was. If you're still with me, this is the part where I ask you a hard question. When the facts finally show up and they're worse than the story you told yourself, what do you do with them? Do you hide them in a drawer and learn to step around it? Or do you name them out loud so they stop naming you? I know what I'm going to do, but that's another scene. For now, I want your words. If you've ever opened a file you thought would explain the past and instead it exploded it, tell me, how did you keep your hand steady? Your comment might be the handrail someone needs when the room tilts. I invited them to my theater because I needed a room that wouldn't lie to me. My theater tells the truth, even when the truth shakes. I texted 3 people. My mother, my father, my brother. The message was exact, like a cue sheet, Sunday 4 p.m., my place. I need to say this on my stage. Please come, we'll move slow, listen first. All morning I cleaned like clarity depended on Pine Sol. I rolled the dust mop over the concrete that used to be a shoe repair floor and now is a map of every story we've told. I set 4 chairs in a shallow semicircle at center. Between them, a small table. On the table, the envelope from the county, a glass of water, nothing else. I told Eli and my friends I wanted to do this alone. They didn't argue. They left the house lights warm and the exit signs glowing like red punctuation. I waited in the hallway and counted my breath like beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, until the door clicked. My brother came first, stepping inside with the careful energy of someone who knows he's entering a scene already in progress. He looked around, eyes catching on the ladder, the gel frame with a fingerprint on it, the ghost light. "It's smaller than I imagined," he said. "It grows when the story's good," I answered. My mother arrived next, her coat folded over her arm like a shield pretending not to be a shield. Then my father, last again, shoulders stiff under a jacket that didn't know how to relax. He scanned the space, found the exits, found me. "Hannah," he said, testing if my name would hold. "It will," I said, and walked them to the chairs. "Thank you for coming." We sat. The room settled. I listened to its hum. Lights, vents, wood remembering every step. For a breath, I let silence do its work. Silence here is not emptiness, it's readiness. "I asked you here because I got something," I began. "A file from the county." I rested my hand on the envelope. "It has signatures." I didn't make them guess whose. Their faces told me they already knew. "I'm not here for a fight," I said. "I'm here to say the truth out loud where I can hear it back." My mother's hand crept toward her knee and smoothed fabric that didn't need smoothing. "We'll listen," she said. I opened the envelope. Paper rasped like a soft shiver. I didn't hold the pages like weapons. I held them like artifacts recovered from a site everyone swore didn't exist. I read the sentence that had branded me, not all of it, just the part that mattered. Both parents voluntarily and knowingly relinquish all rights and responsibilities. The words still tasted metallic. My father's jaw clenched. I regret it. I lifted a finger, not a shush, a placing of breath. No edits yet. Let the line land. We let it land. You could feel the floorboards listening. "I've spent years calling what happened abandonment because that was a story I could carry," I said. "But this is different. This is choice shaped like ink." My mother nodded, eyes wet but focused. "You're right. I don't need your tears to make my truth heavier," I said gently. "I need your ears." I put the paper down and looked at them, one at a time, not to assign blame like helmets, but to anchor the moment. I need you to know I built a life with that sentence pressed into my bones. And I need you to see that the life I built is not a consolation prize, it's an answer. My brother exhaled a small sound, almost a prayer. "I see it," he whispered. "I invited you here because this stage is where I decide what my voice means," I continued. "As a kid, I learned to fill silence with survival. As a woman, I learned to fill it with story. Today I'm filling it with rules. I stood not to tower, but because my legs wanted to be sturdy. Rule 1. We don't rename what happened. We call it what it was. You relinquished, I survived. We're not performing for a nicer audience." My father flinched, then studied the floor like he might find a softer word hiding in the grain. Rule 2. You don't tell my story for me, not to friends, not to spouses. Not to anyone who didn't earn it. If someone asks why we're complicated, you say, "Ask Hannah." My mother nodded, a slow bow to a truth that had waited decades for daylight. Rule 3. Pace belongs to me. If I say not yet, it means not yet. If I say enough for today, we close the curtain. My brother sat forward. "What about me? What can I do?" "You can keep showing up like this," I said. "And when the past tries to make us sprint, you hold the metronome." He almost smiled. "Copy that." My father cleared his throat. "May I speak now?" "Yes," I said. "Speak, not rewrite." He clasped his hands. "I can tell you the calculations we made, money, fear, advice that sounded official. But any math that adds up to that sentence is wrong math. I can't unsign it. I can only sign something else now with how I behave." "What would you sign?" I asked, he thought. For once, he didn't reach for policy language. "I would sign that I will not defend the indefensible, that I will accept the pace you set, that I will earn, not demand, any place in your life." It wasn't eloquent. It was simple. I trusted simple more. My mother spoke without looking away from me. "I will not ask you to make me feel better about what I did. If there is forgiveness later, let it be because you want to give it, not because I need it to sleep." She pressed her lips together, "And I will not call what we did best." It was fear. It was small. The air changed. Not cleared, change like rain starting. The stage smelled faintly of dust and electricity and something like citrus from the cleaner I'd overused. I felt my heartbeat settle into the same tempo as the room. I lifted the envelope again. "There's one more signature I need today," I said. I pulled a blank index card from my pocket. On it, in blue ink, I'd written a single sentence. "I accept my own belonging." I set it on the table beside the water. "This is mine." My mother reached for a tissue and dabbed at the corner of her eye, careful not to smear mascara onto a moment that deserved clean lines. Can we witness?" "That's what I asked you here for," I said. I took the pen. I let my hand hover. The last time ink decided my life, other people held the pen. This time, the weight balanced perfectly in my fingers. My name came out steady, Hannah. I added my last name and the date. The card looked small on the table and also the size of the room. I slid the card between the pages of the county file, not to hide it, to braid it. Their decision would live next to mine, and mine would not be smaller. We didn't clap, we didn't pray, we breathed. I poured water and passed the glass to my mother. She took a sip like a peace-taking. I poured for my father. He held the glass with both hands, as if to prove he wouldn't drop this. I drank last. The water was boring and perfect. Then I did something I should have done at 9 and finally could at 33. I stood center stage and said my name out loud. First name, middle, last. The ceiling fan hummed its old hymn. The theater held it like a bowl. My family repeated it after me, awkward, unsure, then certain, the sound layered. For once, the echo felt like company, not haunting. We talked logistics after that, the kind that serve love, not replace it. Small things, a slow coffee in 2 weeks outdoors, a plan for my brother to text before he visits, not just show up, a boundary about holidays, no sudden invitations that force me to choose wonder or wounds. We wrote them down. We each took a picture. There were still thorns. My father asked if he could help with something concrete at the theater. Chairs, I said. They wobble when people lean forward. I want them steady. He smiled with a sadness that suited him. I can tighten screws. Fine, start there. My mother asked about the letter she'd handed me at dinner. Will you read it? Not today, I said. But I won't lose it. I touched my bag. It felt like touching a bruise you're not afraid of anymore. When it was time for them to go, I walked them to the door. My brother hugged me first, quick and fierce again. I'll keep the metronome, he said into my hair. I know, I said. My mother didn't reach with arms open. She asked, May I? I nodded. She hugged me like a ceremony, brief, clean, witnessed. My father held out his hand again, and this time I took it, then turned it, and placed the index card copy I'd made in his palm. This is for your wallet, I said. When you forget, read it. He nodded, throat working. They stepped into the afternoon. The door closed gently, not a slam. A close that meant return was possible. I stood for a long second in the quiet and felt the shape of the room change again, bigger now, because we'd told the truth inside it. I carried the envelope and the signed card to the little nail where we hang prop keys and taped a copy there, eye level, so every actor who comes through will see it. I accept my own belonging. When the ghost light is on at night, that sentence will glow. That's the kind of set dressing I want my life to keep. And you? Yes, you watching this on your phone or your laptop or your TV with the volume a little too low because you don't want anyone to know you're crying. This is where I want to hand you the pen. If a system or a story or a person once wrote your name into a sentence that shrank you, write a new one out loud. In the comments if you want. On a sticky note if you don't. What will yours say? I choose my pace. I do not apologize for existing. I am not what was done to me. Pick one or write your own. Because here's the truth I learned on a stage I built from concrete and stubborn. Closure isn't forgetting. Closure is choosing the final line yourself. Today, mine was simple, mine was signed. And for the first time, it felt like the whole room signed back. If this met you where you are, share the sentence you'll carry. Someone scrolling at 3 a.m. might need your words to steady their hands when the room tilts. I'll be reading, I'll be cheering. And if you don't have a sentence yet, borrow mine until you do.